Okay, so Dan Sullivan on water.
Thanks for inviting me, Frazier. Appreciate
Our
it.
pleasure.
So the Pembroke Water Division, our goal is to provide potable drinking water per Mass DEP regulations, provide sufficient water for firefighting needs. We do this through a network of 135 miles of water main, 1,000 fire hydrants to maintain water quality, 3 water storage tanks, 4 groundwater sources, 1 filtration plant, and 2 pumping stations. A common comment we have is, do we have enough water? So this graph here shows us our permitted daily demand, what DEP allows us to pump. Per our permit, we're allowed to pump 1.7 million gallons a day on average. So the winter months, we'll be pumping under 1 million, but that allows us to go up to, say, 3 million in the summertime. So it's an average. The orange line is our monthly pumpage for 2023. As you can see, in the summer months and even into September when it's hot and dry, that's our usage does increase, but we were well below the 1.7 million that were permitted on a daily demand. The highest day we pumped last year was 1.9 million, I believe that number represents. In past years, we've gone up as high as 2.6. So while DEP issues water permits by average, we do have to be able to hit peak demands, which can sometimes more than double what an average day is based off of weather, drought situations. People tend to use more water outside, which is expected. I think you can go to the next slide.
Sure.
So currently, this is a list of our sources that we have online. And it represents how much we can pump currently. So right now, we have the ability to pump 2.34 million gallons a day. The firm capacity, the next column there, we always need a plan for a worst case scenario. The likelihood of a well going down, we need to know if we can still meet that demand. So when you take off your highest producing well, you can see that we are only at 1.4 right now. However, we did reestablish the Brockton Interconnect, which could supply us upwards of 1 million gallons a day for redundancy. So while our wells currently, the highest one was offline, wouldn't meet it, we can purchase water from Brockton. Going forward, we are looking to develop the Swanberg property. We're in the process right now going through planning and conservation to get that online. That will provide us an extra 247 gallons a minute, which is 350,000 gallons a day. And we are also proceeding with developing Edgewood bogs, which we will hopefully permit for 1 million gallons a day. As you can see, once those two are online, we'll have the ability to pump up to 4.18 million and have a firm capacity at 3.19, which we haven't crossed that 3 million threshold on a high day, any day. So along with that pumpage, we also have the storage tanks, which hold over 1.5 million, which gives us a buffer. So even if you were to exceed, you had a heavy day and you had to pump down, we still have that buffer in the tanks to meet and supply fire needs. A couple of notes. Like I said, back in 2014, that was one of our highest days on record. That was 2.6 million we pumped that day. The 1.7 million per day average that were permitted. On average during the summer right now, we're doing about 1.5, I'd say. Well 1, so the reason we're developing Swanberg and Edgewood bogs is well 1 was taken offline in 2009 due to poor water quality. It was officially abandoned as of a few months ago. We had the building demoed. So with these new sources coming on, it'll make up that capacity that we lost over the years. Swanberg is hopefully online fall of 2026. That might be pushed back to spring of 27 at this point. Edgewood bogs, if everything keeps going as planned, 2028. And we are also looking at a replacement well 4. Well 4 currently we can pump 400 gallons a minute. It was originally rated for 700. So because of the decline over the years, we are looking at a replacement for that source.
So the future capacity, Dan, that's the timeline for that future capacity is the maximum is towards 2028. Is that correct?
Yes. So we're in the testing phase of Edgewood Bogs, it was previously permitted, so it's favorable that it'll go through. So if everything continues as planned, 2028, we would hope to have that online.
Right. But that's 2028, but that's 694. If you take the 694, you're increasing the capacity dramatically by the fall of 2026. Is that correct?
Fall of 2026, we're hoping to have Swanberg on, which is the 247.
Yeah.
So at that point, we would be able to hit the average day demand. The extra, that 247 would give us, like I said, an extra 350,000 gallons a day. So on top of that, 1.4 would put us at 1.7, which is what we're permitted for. So in theory, in 2026, we'll be able to hit the permitted average again that we lost.
Okay, shall I move on?
Yeah. So to rectify, obviously, dirty water is a hot topic. Water bans, water restrictions. The water restrictions are part of our Water Management Act permit. Everything we do is regulated by DEP. When we can pump, how much we can pump. One of the biggest things, DEP's Department of Environmental Protection, is about preserving the water and our resources. So they do require us to issue, they mandate that we have water restrictions every May through September. Ours are pretty strict right now. As we proceed on developing things, we hope we can lax that up a little bit while still meeting the DEP goals, which is our gallons per day per person, which has to be under 65 gallons per person. Right now we're at 50, so we're well below that. And then keeping on top of our unaccounted for water that doesn't get billed to customers. Part of development plan, we will be under contract hopefully next month to do a water master plan. The goals of that will be identifying water main replacement and rehabilitation on many online cast iron mains, most of which we've identified. We just want to work with that consultant and prioritize which ones need to be done first and evaluate if the main should be upsized to provide more capacity to the areas of town, especially areas that have had a lot of buildings such as 53, as Andy mentioned. All that is verified by our consultants. Anybody that wants to build in town, we do make them fill out a water availability permit, which our consultant will do a fire flow test, make sure we'll be able to meet fire flow demands in that area, and evaluates how much demand that development will use. Specifically, that the country club, they just recently did it. We only anticipate 23,000 gallons a day of increased usage, which, as you can see, pumpage wise, that only about 8 minutes a day more pumpage for us to meet that demand. Bringing in that new growth though helps pay down all the capital improvement projects that we do. So everything we bring in, there's fees for them to tie in. That'll help us pay down the debt we incur to do all these improvements. Also, we'll obviously be looking at future water demands, water storage capacity, and meeting future water regulations. Because we fall under DEP in the federal government, there's constantly changes in the regulations that we have to meet, and they're always, looking for new contaminants to make sure the water's safe for all the residents. I think that about covers it, Asia.
Terrific, Dan. Thank you. I do actually have an additional slide that I think is important for the residents to see.
Sure.
You've touched on this. This isn't because you're failing. This is regulations from state or whoever, but it's not about capacity, correct?
Correct.
These signs.
So part of our Water Management Act permit is protecting the natural resource. Unnecessary waste is frowned upon. Any community that does exceed, like I said, we do have goals hitting less than 65 gallons per person per day, unaccounted for water under 10%. Whenever we exceed anything like that, which the per capita we're not in excess of, there are penalties that DEP would impose on a community. And they would try and force you to have stricter water restrictions, which is put on the department to enforce.
So these signs are not put up because you can't deliver water, just to be clear.
Correct, yes. We
There
could
you
meet the demand now, and like I said, with the Brockton interconnect, a lot of communities have interconnections between them for emergency purposes, so that way you can always supply and meet your needs.
And I'm going to bring a question in. The Brockton water
Yep.
that we're moving to Brockton, it's not What kind of water is that, Dan, that we're sending
So
to Brockton?
that's surface water. That's from
Surface
Silver
water,
Lake.
okay.
All of our wells are groundwater wells. Most of them, I'd say about 75 feet below the surface of the surface. So we don't particularly want surface water. We actually touch base on that at planning board. So when you have surface water, there's a whole nother slew of treatment techniques and processes that you have to follow. So groundwater is your best bet, providing safe water. You don't have to worry about coliform. There's a lot less risk of contamination with a source well.
Thank you, Dan. I think it's, I'm sorry. Over to Bill.
I think Dan's being kind on that, having worked in water systems that have used surface water in the past. Surface water sucks, folks. I mean, there's a lot going on with E. coli and other things when you're pumping water out of these lakes. Having groundwater wells, even if you have brown water, which we're trying to eliminate, the water quality here is so much better than what we would have if we had surface water.
When is the town of Pembroke going to take action to rectify our serious water issues? I really think, I mean, that's a great question, but I think you've covered that fairly well, Dan. So I'm going to, unless there's any objections, objection coming in already.
Yeah, I think so.
Should we share a mic?
Oh, do we need it? I'm pretty loud.
You're not recorded, though.
Oh, okay. That's
This work? Okay.
So I think what Dan was talking about before was a lot about well and supply.
Yep.
And you alluded to the fact that we're about to do a master plan on water mains. And I do think it's worth noting the distinction there. So Old Colony Planning Council, with the support of South Shore Chamber and the legislature and the EDA, has a regional water study underway that Dan Sullivan's been a part of, getting local input on. And that is looking at how any of this development, how any changes in growth over time are going to impact our environment, our groundwater, our watersheds, right? So it's looking at all of those supply and quality of water itself. And we've put a lot of work into that. But I think that when people are saying rectify our serious water issues in town, most of the time what they're really talking about is water mains. Mm-hmm. You know, we did have a year where we had really serious shortage, right? We were down a well, we had some issues, and we were short water. But for the most part, right now, I think what people are upset about is the brown water and the fact that you're going to have to replace some water mains to really start to deal with that, unless there's something else, Dan, that you guys have in place that is going to help with that in the short term. But it might help to give people a sense of the timeline to come up with a master plan and start to put that into effect. I would also note that a lot of our well issues we were able to take care of in part because of things like ARPA and federal money that was coming through COVID, as Peter was alluding to. And that really helped us do that without as much impact on ratepayers. But when you start talking about water mains, unless a new funding system comes in, that's going to be a new category. So I just think when people are asking that question, they may be asking about the second half that is sort of future.
Sure. So we already have a couple of water main projects in the works. High Street, I'm sure anybody that lives on High Street, that's a big problem area. We've already done survey work out there. We just did test borings. So we're in the engineering, the design phase of the project. We're hoping to go out to bid this winter and start construction in the spring. We're also addressing Oldham Street from Pine Tree. That's why they're stopping paving at Pine Tree. From Pine Tree down to Hazelwood. West Elm is stopping at Dwelly because we got to go from Dwelly to the Hanover town line, along with up Dwelly, stopping to Shire, Stanford Hill. So we're trying to get all these water main projects in the works. And then we're going to address the rest with the master plan. Like I said, looking at sizing and kind of which projects go best together and flow together. In doing that too, we're hoping to apply for more SRF loans to get low interest loans on them. A lot of that's going towards mitigation of PFAS. PFAS is a hot topic. but we are gonna try to apply for that, and that's a process. So we need to get some water main jobs in the works, and then going forward, we're gonna try and get SRF loans, and then we're also gonna be looking at a community block grant, hopefully when we do the Oak Street tank, because that's up in the area where it's zoned for the MBTA housing. Discolored water, like you said, that's the hot topic. That's from the unlined cast iron pipes. That has been already started to be addressed. So there was an abandonment on Center Street that was unlined cast. Most of it, there was some other pipe material. And then Barker Street. Now we're moving on to High Street, Oldham, West Elm. So we are going after the problem pipe materials. It's going to take time. It's about $2.5 million per mile. So it's going to take time and money.
Thank you, Dan. I think that's actually the next question about the old water pipes being replaced. So it's going to take time. It's about $2.5 million per mile.
Yep.
And you're working on it.
Yeah, and with that, we'll have new roadways, new hydrants. When we do a water main project, we're going to upgrade any responsibility of the water system. So our water services from the main to the homeowner side, which can have leaks, those will all be new fire hydrants, new water main, obviously, and hopefully get 100 years plus life expectancy out of it.
There is a question being asked, and it's coming up later, but I'm going to ask it now. When Bill's talking about a road project where he's digging up the road, there's obviously some coordination with the work you're doing, so you're not duplicating effort.
Exactly. So obviously, when we do we're going to disturb the road pretty severely. So when we're done, it'll be a new roadway. So we are working with the DPW director and highway foreman to make sure our project is getting done roughly a year in advance of any future paving, just to make sure we're in coordination. We're not, ripping up new roads. Like you said, we had that issue with the gas company, but they're working with us, giving us the funds so that we can pave after we do the water main work on High Street.
Terrific. Just saved some questions there. Yes, sorry, Dan.
Dan, while you're on the subject, can you just talk about directional flushing, and that's the temporary solution for the brown water?
Yeah, so the unidirectional flushing program, it does need to be conducted twice a year. What it does is we are able to flush a system in the most cost-effective way and timely way. Actually, from the first last fall when we did the first completion to this spring, we used 25% less water because of it, and it shows that the program's working. So the unidirectional flushing program is going to clean any sediment that's in the pipe out, which causes discolored water when there's times of high flow or fires or illegal usage of a hydrant. Gets that sediment out, and it also gives us data to target problem areas. So these unlined cast iron pipes have a tendency to tuberculate, so minerals deposit on the inside and there's corrosion of the pipe walls. So when we're flushing, we can see the decline of flow available in an area, so we can target more problematic areas. And with High Street specifically, it's a frequent caller for discolored water. We do see the flows are dramatically lower, and we get that information from the flushing program. So we continue to use that as a tool to target areas that need work, along with customer complaints, and it also is the best way to flush a system while preserving as much water as possible and collecting data.
Thank you, Dan. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question or comment. Thank you. First of all, as a resident of Pembroke for 47 years, I want to thank the chamber and everybody who participated in this meeting. It's unbelievable what's going on right now. It's been a great meeting. And I have a concern about water too. Many years ago, being involved in town, I sponsored an article that protected the groundwater in a certain area from pollution is on the books. And we have great water. And I did kind of a paper on that. And one of the things I talked about was protecting our water from other towns. We know what happened to Silver Lake and the other ponds, how we lost it, that water. And we have great groundwater. And one of the things I said is, what's going to happen if down the road other towns try getting our groundwater? We have talked now about looking into the region. So I guess the question is, how do we make sure that being part of a study, a part of a group, all of a sudden we don't find ourselves saying, oh, we're going to allow somebody else to use some of our groundwater too, and end up like Silver Lake, or end up when we join the MBTA system. So I have concerns that we don't let this go to a point where all of a sudden we're part of a consortium and we're allowing some of our good water to go to other towns as it's happened in the past.
I understand the question, Bob, and I appreciate it. I'm not sure it's one for Dan, and it's actually one for the select board. Where's Tracy? I mean, it's not.
Can I answer that?
Sure.
Because the chamber's beginning to look at this water issue, and Bob, I wouldn't necessarily look at it about sharing water supply and transferring it from town to town, but everyone talks about water as the town's water supply. And actually, no town does have a single water supply. Every community I know of is drawing from a larger common watershed that crosses town boundaries. And the big question we have as we look at the future of our regional economy is, how do you protect water resources for sustainability? That's not just having enough water supply for use and growth, but how do you protect the water supply so it's going to be around for a long time, and you get the natural resources and all of that. So we're hoping, and I'm launching this because I leave the chamber at the end of this year, so I'm launching it for somebody else to do. You know, Pete Brown's on our chamber board. Mike Murphy is here. He's on our Economic Development Corporation, which helped fund the water study. And what we're trying to start as a business organization is, how do we bring business and governments together to start looking at their common watershed resource and protect that? And that's the type of intermunicipal dialogue we're hoping to see, not so much a question of who's going to pipe whose water to what other town and steal that. So I hope people start looking at that more than thinking about who's going to take my water, because you're taking it from a source that feeds another town.
I was on the master planning committee. I'm on the planning board. My name's Stephen Roundtree. I just want to say that, like, many, many years ago, I bought a home in Dunstable on 2.5 acres because that was our zoning, and it was on a trout stream. And I had a couple of other engineers in my town, and we got together and we looked at the town, and we did a SimCity study. So we did the first state cluster zoning law. We also did a master plan that was updated annually, and we also bought land in the town to protect the water. The citizens, we took a proactive approach of using our tax base to buy property to protect the water quality. And then we attempted to use the water as a resource for entertainment, fishing, canoeing, etc. I moved to Pembroke specifically because Pembroke is a water community on the South Shore. And I got involved in planning because I wanted to do this type of thing. But the town has to get involved. Businesses are not going to do it for us. We have to do it. We have to start looking at wastewater treatment facilities. I was totally thrilled when this 55 plus had a wastewater treatment facility. Even our additional growth of what we're doing in the town, we have to start looking at the way we look at wetlands protection, okay? Wetlands protection, if I buy a house and it's got a wetland zone on it, I shouldn't be doing anything in that area. But on top of that, I shouldn't even own the property, because that affects water quality for the town. So as a developer, we should be setting up zoning laws where we say, okay, I've got this lot, it's a 1 acre lot, but a portion of it's wetlands. So when I go to the town, I want to say, look, I've got a 1 acre lot, but I'm going to carve off the wetlands. That's what I'll be taxed on as the person who owns the property. And then the wetlands is permanently protected. It's a simple thing. So there's things that we can do to be proactive, but we the people have to do it. It's not going to get done by business effectively. We have to proactively start doing these things. And surface water is what becomes groundwater that they're pumping. So it's not protected if the surface water is not protected. It's as simple as that. So we need to start protecting our ponds. We need to look at buying land when it comes available on any pond in town. The town people, we need to be buying property around ponds. Once we buy that property, then we can redevelop it as the town. We can say, pull all those houses away from the town, build a large development project with affordable housing, with a wastewater treatment facility, and all those septic systems are now off the pond. We can do it with a master plan 40 years in the future and work towards it. And it will get paid for because you buy the land, you hold the land for 10 years, it's developable, you turn it into revenue, you fix the problem. It's all doable, but we as citizens have to do it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Stephen. And you were actually on the master plan committee,
Yes, they shared.
and there you go. So elements of that,
Plan and we're still working.
I understand, but elements of what you've just said then are in that master plan. I think we're going to have a bit of a quick show of hands here. We've got 10 minutes left. We're halfway through the water questions, and we've got questions for the other departments. Do we move on? Okay.